You're listening to the Boomtime Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast. For over 50 episodes, Boomtime has been the professional source for marketing information and inspiration. For more articles and episodes, visit us at boomtime.com and be sure to subscribe to the Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast on your iPhone or Android device to listen on the go. Now here's your host, JP Clement.
Welcome to the Boomtime Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast. My name is Donnie Valdez. I'm a marketing strategist at Boomtime, and I'm here with JP Clement, our CEO. This week, we're talking about retention. We're on week 6 of our 8-week deep dive into your marketing funnel. Last week in week 5, we talked about customer experience, and next week, we're talking about advocacy. But right now, we're focusing on retention. So my first question for you today, JP, is what are some effective ways to stay in communication with customers? I think it's super important. And what's going on now? What tools and techniques can we take advantage of to keep in communication with customers?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of tools that you can use for that. I mean, one of the obvious ones that we use ourselves at Boomtime, but which is very low cost and high return, is email. You have your customers' email list, and you can very easily put together a plan about where you communicate with them on a regular basis to make sure that they don't have any issues, that they understand what you're doing, that their needs are being served correctly, and so on. And email marketing and things like newsletters or just regular type of email communications that offer some kind of value to your customers in the sense of tips and maybe tips and recommendations on how to use your own services or products, and reminding them that you might have a customer service hotline and things like that, of that nature. Or just what's going on with your company, are great things to talk about and keep reminding these people that you are there, that you're there to help, and so on. And I think we talked about that in one of the previous weeks. It's 8 times cheaper to retain a customer than to get a new one. So anything you can do to keep your customers happy and keep them, keep yourself as a company top of mind, relative to your customers, is critical. And email is an easy, inexpensive way to actually do that.
How do you feel about social media in regards to communication with customers?
I think it's a great tool, especially for customer service. There's been this big trend in the past few years where social media channels such as Facebook Messenger, Twitter, and other places like that have been really making a huge leap into the customer service pool, and it's working really well. Which means it needs to be monitored, obviously, and there are tools that help you monitor that, like that aggregate all these different sources of communication. But it's social media as a customer service tool has been really making strides in the past few years, as I said. And I think it can be a low cost, high touch kind of way to keep communicating with your customers and solving customer service issues.
So you mentioned it kind of being a two-way street, which, sometimes it's very easy to know when your customers are not satisfied. But what are some ways to know if they are satisfied? How do you know if you are keeping them happy and doing a great job just across the board?
Yeah, so interestingly, stats have shown for the past several years that you're 10 times, I think, or something, 9 to 10 times more likely to hear from a disgruntled customer than you are from a happy customer. So, it's people who are happy don't necessarily say much, but people who are not happy are very vocal. And this is why, being able monitoring your customer service channels is critical, because they will say bad things about you. They'll put bad reviews on Google, on Yelp, depending on what your business is, or other places, right? And in your social media will complain. It's very prominent for B2C companies, but also happens a lot with B2B companies. And So monitoring your channels, all your channels of communication for unhappy customers is important. But I think for happy customers, the silent majority, hopefully for you as a company, you have to be more proactive and ferret out those happy customers. And so there are different techniques to do that. Obviously, you can survey them via email, possibly, or on other channels, which can work very well. You can do official, formal, kind of research or studies, that targets that. You can do, I think at some point in the past few weeks too, we talked about the NPS score, the Net Promoter Score, which is a great way to figure out, overall, how are your clients and your customers feeling about what you're doing for them. And great to track over time, obviously, to see if there are any changes in that. But that's, to get a Net Promoter Score, you have to ask people questions. But that's a pretty straightforward way to do that as well. And so your sales team and your marketing team can help. If you have only a pretty limited set of customers, you can have people actually picking up the phone or sending emails out to ask for testimonials, or to ask to fill out surveys, or Net Promoter Score surveys, or just regular surveys about how happy your customers were. Which, as we know, in a world of word of mouth marketing, is critical to get those great, those reviews, those testimonials, those happy customers that are going to spread the word about what you're doing well as a company.
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into getting a lot of that positive feedback, especially the public stuff. But inevitably, there will be a customer service failure or a fulfillment failure, because we're all human. So what's the best way to deal with that, or not deal with it, but like turn it around into a positive experience for everybody involved when there is some sort of a customer service failure, or just a service failure in general?
Yeah, so that happens quite a bit. And as we talked about, usually your disgruntled customers are the more vocal ones, and the ones more likely to actually take their grievances out in the public, right? In public forums, like, social media and other places. So you have to respond first, and you have to listen to your customer. You have to listen to their grievance. These people want to be heard, obviously, especially if you have a big failure and they're very vocal about it. That means there's a little bit of a cry for help, right? They want to be heard, so you need to listen to them. And it's psychology 101 maybe, but it does work. Listening to them, letting them know you're paying attention, and then being very proactive in after you've heard what the grievances are, telling them how you're going to be tackling this problem. Very specific problem, but also how that relates to the bigger picture, and telling them how you're gonna prevent these problems from happening again. And also and if it's happening in a public forum, this is even more important, because you can tell the rest of the people around there that you are doing the right thing, you're tackling this the right way, and this will not happen to them. Which is a great way to kind of reinforce your marketing and your positioning, and kind of act as the good guy in this sub story. And so yeah, so you have and being defensive, being aggressive, all of that doesn't work. And it's been proven that if you are humble and responsive, and listen, and tackle the problem in the most customer-friendly possible way, these problems can go away. And there are actually a lot of stories about customers who had problems with a company, made a big deal about it, got treated really well. The companies responded in the right way, which I just described, and actually turn these complainers into influencers, and into people promoting their business because they were treated so well. So a customer service failure, or a service failure period, if handled correctly, can turn into a big positive. Not always, and some people won't listen to any kind of reason, but you should be able to at least minimize the impact and possibly turn it around and make it into a positive.
When you say it that way, it sounds very logical to me, and I wish everybody would handle it that way. But it is, difficult to not get defensive when it's your business and stuff. So, but I do
Yeah.
think handling things like that and turning them into positive experiences for everyone is a great way to build loyalty. What are some other ways to build loyalty among your customer base?
Yeah, so I'll answer that before. I just want to come back to what you just said because I think it's pretty critical. Yes, it is easy to become defensive and to put the blame back on the client and or customer. But I think this is what really good companies do well is that they are self-aware enough of what their issues might be, what their where their weak points are and what they need to do better. And I think when you start listening and you don't take a very defensive or aggressive approach to answering those questions and really listen, it automatically puts you in the camp of in a small group of companies that do this right. And it's but it comes as part of the culture of the company too. You have to make sure that all your employees and everybody that's going to answer those big tackle those big issues are humble enough and self-aware enough and of where the company is to be able to to make the situation right, basically. So anyway, that's it. So other ways to get great loyalty. So I think one is, and we talked about it a little bit, is communication, right? Constant communication is the best way to create a loyalty and a good rapport with your customers. So for instance, and by communication, it not just no. We talked about email, we talked about social media, but also one-on-one communication, right? So we do this at Boomtime, right? We talk on a regular basis to all of our clients one-on-one. I pick up the phone or the virtual phone and talk to our clients, because that's something that promotes great loyalty and great communication. There's all kinds of ways that you can communicate with them, but I highly recommend that there is a communication plan for after the sale is made, so you can keep that relationship going with your clients and drive loyalty. There's nothing worse than a client that doesn't hear from anybody at your company for a while. And depending on your business, you might have only a few contact points with your clients after they purchase your product or service. So keeping that communication going is really critical in terms of loyalty. And then there's all kinds of tools depending on your business where you can drive loyalty via gamification, via monetary rewards, via there's all kinds of things that you can do, even that are very common in the B2C space, but also work in the B2B space. So loyalty programs basically. But there's all kinds of ways to do this and get that loyalty firmed up. Again, doing research and, for instance, net promoter score studies is a way to keep in touch with your clients. It's a way of communicating, but it's also a way of giving them a voice and letting them tell you what you're doing well or not. And that kind of, that tends to breed loyalty too. You might have a client that may not be very happy with what you're doing, and you're giving him a chance to say so and tell you. That can promote loyalty because you might be able to not only hear from them but turn around. But there's a psychological thing at play here. Like if you ever done therapy or couples therapy, you probably know about that. Where the first thing is like listening and telling people that they can tell you anything that they want, and you're not going to react negatively to what they're telling you. So there's all kinds of ways you can do that to keep that happy relationship going.
Wow, that's pretty good. So in the first few weeks of this series, we're talking kind of about the buyer's journey, or we were talking about the buyer's journey. And now we're talking more about the customer journey. And I think a lot of marketing content and discussions are centered around the buyer's journey, because at that point, you can hand a lead off to the sales team and your job is done. The ROI has been proven, or return on ad spend, or whatever metrics that you're looking at. And a lot of times we don't focus many KPIs, I think, on the customer journey. But one that I do see a lot is like churn rate, and everybody talks about churn. And so as a marketer, what can you do to identify problems and lower the customer churn rate?
Yeah. So again, I think that, to me, a marketer's job is never done. It's never fully done, right? Because a lot of companies and a lot of marketers actually, as you just described, do all the work to get to get leads into the funnel, to walk these leads down the funnel. But as soon as they become a customer, they stop, and the marketing stops. And to me, what I was saying, but that this funny little line of like marketer is never done, is that you can't stop here. You got to keep on going. You got to keep on marketing and having those touch points with your customers, as we just talked about, to make sure that they're happy, they turn into influencers, promoters of your business and your services and your brand and your products and so on. And so again, you gotta have your marketing needs to address every single step of the buyer's journey and the customer journey. And this is so, again, all kinds of techniques that we talked about in terms of communicating with your customers are the ones that you should be using as a marketer. But in a way, I mean, you need, there's a very simple marketing tool or tactic that you can use, which is, telling a customer that they made the right decision, right? So, again, there's different ways to do that. You can do it via email, you can do it, but just targeting your marketing to different parts of the life cycle of one of your customers, from total unknown to lead to customer to loyal customer. Throughout, you need to, if you can afford it, obviously, to diversify your marketing, to not just focus on the first couple of stages, but also think about, what it means to, again, keep these people happy, keep yourself in front of these people, and keep reinforcing the fact that they made the right decision by hiring you, and keep talking about those things, right? So so there's a few things that you can do, obviously, as we talked about: email, one-on-one communication, studies, research, monitoring what's being said about you and whatnot. But I think it's more about, at this point, it's not necessarily the tactics, but that you're using, the tools, but it's the messaging, right? It's a different messaging to tell someone, hey, you made the right choice by buying our products, services, whatnot, and from saying, hey, we're here, we exist, look, we're great at what we do, come and buy from us. It takes, it's a different approach. It's obviously a different mentality, and it's different messaging. The tactics are roughly the same, but you need to keep saying. So just keep doing a great job on LinkedIn, at messaging on LinkedIn for a B2B company, and sending, and keep educating your customers into what you're doing, and talking about how great you are and why you're great at it, and things like that. Not only impacts, your incoming leads, but also your existing customers.
How do you feel about customer loyalty programs in general, or other ways to encourage customers to return?
Well, I think they're necessary.
Sure.
Again, it depends. They depend very much on what you do, what your products are, your services are, and so on. But again, as we said, it's way more efficient to keep a current customer than to get a new one. So the cost per acquisition of a customer typically is, as we said, like 7, 8, 9 times higher than the cost of keeping a current customer. So any kind of loyalty program that you can put in place, or rewards just, it could be social rewards, monetary rewards, all kinds of rewards that you can give your customers for just being a customer and remaining a customer, are very efficient by definition.
I never knew the figure for CPA for new customers was that much higher. That's pretty intense difference. So how much energy do you think should be focused on repeat customers? I guess that's a math balance, right? Like you have to kind of figure that out.
Exactly, it's a math balance because typically, look, you need new customers to survive as a business, typically, but it's also, as we just described, very critical to keep your current customers. And so, yeah, it's just, you have to do the math. Again, we go back to this idea of monitoring, of data manipulation, and looking at analytics and everything. But you need to know what the lifetime value of your customer is. You need to compute that. You need to know what your cost of per acquisition is. And then you do the math, and then you can see how much you can spend time and money you should be spending on retaining customers versus generating new ones. One of my first job in the digital space was as a VP of marketing for a company called City Search, and we were basically at the time selling websites. It was in 1998, so it was a long time ago. But we were selling websites to local businesses and putting them on our local directory. That's what City Search was. And there's a lot of content going on, but we're having a torrid time keeping those businesses from churning out of our system. And one of the first things that I was tasked with, and I did, was to generate, programs, first to identify the causes of that churn. Obviously, the first thing you should be doing is your discovery, but then putting together programs, not to get more businesses in the funnel, but to actually keep the ones that we had already put in the funnel, and they were customers of ours. And so churn reduction is critical for all businesses. We were a startup at the time, but mature businesses, startups, everybody, you need to reduce churn. And there's and focusing on reducing churn pays very high dividends. The ROI on reducing churn is very high.
Very cool. Well, I think that's about it for today. That was a lot of info, and I think everybody has some homework to do now.
Well, we do.
Yeah, we definitely do. Well, that was our week 6 of our 8-week deep dive into your marketing funnel. Next week, JP and I are going to talk about advocacy. We're going to talk about gathering reviews, referrals, and even affiliate programs. So as we dive deeper into the customer journey, please join us, like and subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Boomtime Word of Mouth Marketing Podcast. For more episodes and to learn more about us, check us out at boomtime.com.